Morning, everybody. Welcome. Good to see you all. Call the meeting to order. Sandra, you want to call the roll?
Of course, Mr. Chair. Secretary Chaudhry is present. Superintendent Chaudhry is absent. Mr. Derenberg?
Here.
Ms. Eberhardt?
Here.
Secretary Flora?
Here.
Mr. Gibbons?
Here.
Ms. Lala is here, and Chair Casemeyer.
Here. Thank you.
You have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any revisions or public comment, Cassandra?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Alex, you want to give us your director's report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, members of the commission. Today, I have just two items to briefly report to you on. The first is that we have just seen an indicator that might suggest that this past year may have witnessed a slight improvement in the average condition of Maryland's pre-K-12 school facilities. As you probably heard me say before, we have seen facility owners keep older facilities in good working condition through good maintenance, and we have also seen facility owners fail to maintain facilities such that they reach a deteriorated condition in even just a short number of years. As a result, the age of a facility is only a very rough proxy measure for condition and is much less accurate measure of condition than is the Facility Condition Index, or FCI, measure that we use in the statewide facilities assessment. Nevertheless, it's newsworthy that when we ran the annual update of the average age of square footage report out of our facility inventory database, we found a surprising result. 3 LEAs saw a decrease in the average age of their facilities, and the remaining 21 LEAs held steady, resulting in an average statewide age decreasing to 30 years from last year's figure of 31 years. This is significant. It's the first time that the average age of the statewide portfolio has decreased since the IAC began calculating and tracking this measure in 2005. In our view, due to the time required to design and complete capital projects, it's unlikely that the funding increases of the past 2 years have yet delivered enough completed projects to counterbalance the existing pace of the aging of LEA's portfolios. It's more likely that the decrease in average age has been driven by factors such as the growing trend of LEAs substituting more full renovations and replacements, which significantly reduce the average age of square footage, for batches of building system replacements, which do not. This is a portfolio strategy that the IAC has recognized as a good practice and has been sharing widely amongst the LEAs. Again, because the average age is not a very accurate reflection of facility condition, I'm not concluding from this small 1-year decrease that Maryland's LEAs have necessarily stopped or reversed the long slide in facility condition that we've seen over the past decade plus. However, because this is the first time that the age figure has gone down since we've been tracking the data, this data point really does suggest that the efforts by the LEAs and the IAC over recent years may be having a positive effect on the portfolio condition, and that is wonderful news.
Good.
Second, on the Blueprint Facilities Work Group, IAC staff have facilitated 11 meetings now of the work group and have done a lot of work to develop proposed adjustments to the gross area baselines, both to address changes in educational practices as well as the requirements of the blueprint. We have obtained a great deal of extremely valuable input from the LEAs and other stakeholders in the work group throughout the process, and we will do so in a couple more meetings this month before finalizing draft revisions to the gross area baselines to bring to you at the August IAC meeting. And I'm happy to answer any questions the commission may have on these topics before moving to the consent agenda.
Any questions for Alex? Okay, go ahead, Alex.
Thank you,
Consent
Mr. Chair.
agenda.
Item 2A through G include administrative items, including last month's minutes, new contracts, revisions to previously approved contracts, property transfers, one property transfer amendment, and an easement and right-of-way. We stand for questions on any of these items.
Any questions on the consent agenda? You hear a motion we approve? Ms. Eberhardt,
So moved.
second. Second, Senator Lawler. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Item 3, property disposal, Baltimore City, Alexander Hamilton Elementary School. Cassandra?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning and good morning, Commission members. On April 29th, 2021, the IAC approved the transfer of the Alexander Hamilton Elementary School from the school system to the county and required repayment of outstanding bond debt in the amount of $122,643. Now the city is requesting approval of a sale of that facility to the Associated Catholic Charities. The negotiated sale is for a total of $1.2 million, $700,000 of which is forgivable by the city. COMAR allows the IAC to require that upon disposition, the state be repaid an amount proportional to the state investment in the facility. In order to calculate that amount, we start with the total sale value. In this case, we started with the sale value less the forgivable amount, so only the $500,000. And then we subtract any outstanding bond debt and the appraised value of the land. And then we take a proportional percentage of the remaining amount. In this case, the proposed motion requires that the city pay the state $54,000 of the $500,000 in sale proceeds. So I will read the motion, Mr. Chair, and then I can stand for questions. It's a very lengthy motion, so please forgive me.
Yes.
The motion is to approve the sale of the property formerly used for Alexander Hamilton Elementary School located at 800 Poplar Grove Street, Baltimore, Maryland 21216, from the Mayor and City Council of Baltimore to the Associated Catholic Charities on terms set forth in the draft land disposition agreement between these parties. The consideration for the sale of the property is the amount of $1.2 million, of which amount $500,000 shall be paid in cash and $700,000 shall be evidenced by a seller take-back promissory note from the Associated Catholic Charities to the City of Baltimore. In accordance with this Commission's April 29, 2021 approval of the closure and transfer of this property to the Mayor and City Council of Baltimore, this approval is also conditioned upon full repayment of the outstanding state bond debt associated with this property by Baltimore City within 30 days of the closing of the sale of the property. Further, requiring Baltimore City to pay the state a proportional share of the disposition proceeds based on the state's investment in the school property of $54,752.89. This proportional share is based upon a total consideration of $500,000 pursuant to Schedule C of the provided land disposition agreement and in recognition of the criteria for the city to forgive the $700,000 seller take-back promissory note. However, the IAC reserves the right to require the city to repay the state proportional share of the $700,000 investment, which is $646,980.26, if Baltimore City does not forgive the seller take-back promissory note in accordance with the note. And with
Good job.
that, Mr. Chair, I will stand for questions.
Someone like to make a motion to that effect, so for discussion purposes.
Mr. Chair, I've got one quick question.
Yes, sir.
My team was doing a little bit of due diligence and research on this, and of the 8 schools that were previously approved for closure, the city's still listing 2 that are open, Lewis T. Murray and Sharp Leadenhall Elementary Schools. Just wanted to get confirmation, are those schools still in operation? And if they are, when do they plan to be closed, and when will they be, where will the students be transferred?
Secretary Chaudhry, I don't have that information at my fingertips right now. Rather than spend the Commission's time watching me look it up, I could certainly email you with a follow-up as soon as the meeting's over.
Okay, thank you. That'd be very helpful.
Secretary Flora.
Excuse me, this is Jamie Bridges. I just wanted to pipe in and let you know that both of those facilities were 21st century school building facilities. And so they have been turned into new buildings. So those are open again, but the old buildings were disposed of.
Thank you, Jamie.
Great, so they're open in the new facility.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Thank you for that clarification.
Secretary Flora.
Hi, yes, thank you. It may be in the disposition agreement, but I haven't really been able to get through it in detail, but do we have any assurances in terms of how the school will be reused by the Catholic Association, or what the plans are for redevelopment in that area?
Mr. Chair, at this point, I would defer to Heidi, who is much better versed in that agreement than I am, thankfully.
Heidi, you're there.
I'm here. I just need to get back into the agreement. One moment. Sorry, I was pulling up the note for the 700,000, so I have to get back into the agreements.
While you're looking, and the reason for my question is this particular piece of property appears to be, I haven't visited the site, but so integral to an existing neighborhood. And I'm just curious, not that we may be able to fully control that, but what the actual specific plans are for redevelopment of that site.
And I apologize. I'm just trying to find the specific language in here.
It's on page 50, it talks about the project, the condition of the property and the improvements, but it seems to be very limited. I'm just. Typically in a disposition agreement that I've worked with, but this may not be the case here.
Why don't
There's
we do this?
more
First,
specifics.
Why don't we
Right.
make the motion? So for purposes of discussion, then we'll put it on hold until we get an answer before the end of the meeting.
That would be
Someone
great. Thank you.
like to make a motion that Cassandra described first?
So moved, Gloria.
Second, Mr. Gibbons. Okay, we'll try to find the answer to this issue before we close the day. So why don't we move on to the next issue? Item 4, FY 2025 cost per square foot. Tom Lockman, CFO. Tom?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the Commission. COMAR requires that the IAC establish the statewide per square foot school construction cost that will apply to the capital improvement program by July of the calendar year in which applications are submitted, though this cost may be adjusted with IAC approval to reflect market conditions after initial approval. The cost per square foot approved in July 2023 will apply to those projects that received their first year of construction funding from January 1 to December 31, 2024. The recommended per square foot construction cost is based on a number of different factors, including a review of bids for LEA managed projects, as well as Maryland Stadium Authority managed projects where applicable over the past 12 months, various industry resources that we consult, and cost escalation information used by the Department of Budget and Management for fiscal year 2025 capital budget planning. This incorporates recommendations from the Maryland Bureau of Revenue Estimates, the University of Maryland College Park, Associated General Contractors, as well as bid information from other state managed projects. Based on the review of these resources, IAC staff is recommending that the IAC approve for FY 2025 a 5% increase to the cost per square foot figure from FY 2024, resulting in FY 2025 figures of $404 for building only and $481 for building with site development work, which is calculated at 19% for new construction projects. This increase is consistent with what industry sources and the Maryland Department of Budget and Management are projecting for construction escalation. And it also maintains the IAC's historic approach of remaining conservative in its projections in order to best ensure that available funding can be allocated to support the maximum number of eligible projects and to avoid contributing unnecessarily to inflation in construction costs. It's also important to emphasize that the IAC maintains the authority to consider changes to an individual project's maximum state allocation using the factors identified in COMAR section 1439-0207, and has exercised that authority in recent months and has items on the agenda today reflecting that when sufficient justification has been provided by an LEA for that purpose. So the motion is to adopt the fiscal year 2025 statewide per square foot school construction cost of $404 for a building only. And with that, I would stand for questions.
Any questions? Secretary Flora.
Hi, yes, thank you. So are we providing for any type of inflationary increase as it relates to the site development cost? Then I'm not reading that. We're only doing building. Are we going to be addressing site development at another time, or is that not being addressed at all?
It is, but I was going to ask also, why is it in the motion, that site development number? Tom?
So, Cassandra, did you
Mr.
want to
Chair,
jump in on
weigh
that?
in on that?
Yep.
Yeah. So site is automatically adjusted with the building increase. The way that our COMAR is written, site is provided as a 19% increase over the building cost per square foot for new development, or 5% over that cost per square foot for a renovation on the same site. So as we increase the building cost per square foot, that automatically escalates the building with site figure as well.
Go ahead, Secretary.
But if I can continue, thank you for that. So I understand that, but you're saying that the 19% is only relevant. I just want to repeat back what I think I'm hearing is 19% adjustment, but only for new construction. And then I think I heard it's 5% automatically for existing sites.
Yes, it's 5% for a renovation on the same site, or 19% for a new site.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm sure the calculations are all right. I guess I just want to express that. The existing site, we have no idea the condition of the existing site, or, I mean, I would want to, promote existing site redevelopment whenever possible, particularly if it's in a town or, within walking distance. And it seems like this is almost creating a disincentive in some respects, because existing sites are sort of not being really considered in terms of the particular types of upgrades that might be needed. Is that because this isn't including land acquisition or anything? This is just the site improvements themselves.
It is just site improvements. And so when I say existing site, I mean that a school is already on the site. So typically this is a renovation of the school in place. If they were moving the school to a different part of the site, then they would get the 19%. That would be considered new construction. It's a renovation of the school in place that's limited to 5%. And if that was inadequate, just like we do our project cost increases under COMAR 1439-0207, when the cost per square foot comes in high due to inflation or whatever that reason might be, we could do the same thing if there were site costs over that 5% or over the 19% due to the specific conditions.
Thank you. I just don't want to create a condition where we're incentivizing new construction if we can sort of do upgrades that would be equivalent in an existing condition, and just wanted to voice that. But I think we can move on. Thank you.
Good question. I thought the same thing. There a motion to this effect?
So moved.
Mr. Gibbons, second. Commissioner Derenberg. Any more discussion on this motion? All in favor, raise your hands. Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if you are ready, we are ready to go back to item 3. We
go
have
ahead.
the answer.
Okay.
Hi, Heidi Dutterar for the record, counsel to the IAC. So, and I apologize for the delay. Normally we get a little bit more information than this, but on page 22 of the LDA, and it's page 70 of your packet, is the project description, which is incorporated by reference into the LDA, and it's section A, general. The scope of the project is the rehabilitation of the property for development into Head Start services behavioral services, health services, workforce development, youth activities, meeting and community space and classrooms.
That makes me feel much better. Thank
And
you.
it also appears that they're paying $500 for the land, and if they don't do these improvements within 18 months, they have to pay another $700,000. That's what all the forgivable debt conversation is.
Right.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Exactly. Thank you all. All in favor of the motion, say aye, raise your hands.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, item 5, the adoption of the FY 2025 and 2026 state cost share percentage.
Yes.
Tom or Alex?
Actually,
I
Mr.
think
Chair-
Alex is going to start. Yep.
Yes, if
Okay.
I may, thank you. I'd like to just add some introductory comments before Tom presents the details. Pursuant to Maryland law, every 2 years, the IAC recalculates the state cost share percentage for each county for the following 2 fiscal years. It's now time to do this recalculation and updating. Last year, though, the General Assembly amended the law such that the IAC may no longer hold counties harmless when the formula produces decreases in their state share percentages. As a result, this year, the IAC must implement the cost share percentages that result from the formula, and a number of them will decrease. Tom will walk you through how and why this is the case. But first, I'd like to make some key points. First is that any decrease in a county's state share percentage will not cause any decrease in the total amount of state funding that the county's LEA will receive, because the state cost share operates only at the project level and not at the total LEA allocation level. Second, the law was also changed last year to provide a number of add-ons that in many cases can compensate for any decrease in a county's state share percentage. Third, staff have proposed a phasing in this item of the larger decreases over the course of 2 years in order to cushion the effect of such decreases and provide counties with more time to work on budgetary solutions. And fourth, staff are working to compile data needed to support a full reevaluation and modernization of the 7-factor formula over the next 2 years, so that this could well be the last time the IAC has to use this specific formula. I'm happy to say more about these 4 points after Tom provides the technical details and to answer any questions you might have. And I'll hand it over to Tom now.
Thank you, Alex. I'll begin with an overview presentation of the cost share formula, the factors that are included in that calculation, and a review of the project-based add-ons with an opportunity for questions regarding the mechanics of the formula. Slides that reference this information are included in your meeting packet beginning at page 174. I'll then follow up with a review of the specific calculations and recommendations for the FY 2025 and FY 2026 state cost share percentages based on the formula for the Commission's action. So to start, just with some general background information for CIP Built to Learn Healthy Schools Facility Fund projects, the state pays at least 50% and up to 100% of eligible costs of school construction. County governments, including Baltimore City, are responsible for the local share of eligible costs, as well as 100% of ineligible costs. The state's share varies by LEA based on the formula that considers a number of factors, which I'll detail further here in a minute. And statute requires that the IAC establish the formula, and that the formula itself is promulgated in COMAR. Beginning with FY 2025, the IAC is required to adopt in COMAR specifically each LEA's cost share as calculated by the formula. COMAR regulations require that the state and local cost shares be recalculated every 2 years per the formula, as Alex mentioned, and the state share for an LEA may not decrease by more than 5 percentage points in a 2-year cycle. The formula itself is the sum of the following factors for each LEA. First, the percentage state share of the foundation program, the guaranteed tax-based program amount as a percentage of the foundation program, 1/5 of the amount by which an LEA's free and reduced meal percentage exceeds the state average, the percentage points by which the 5-year enrollment growth for an LEA exceeds the state average enrollment growth for the same period, 5 percentage points for Tier 1 Maryland counties that meet specific unemployment thresholds, and an additional 5 percentage points for those counties that meet specified median household income thresholds. And finally, percentage points by which outstanding school construction debt plus PAYGO funding exceeds 1% of a county's wealth, or what we also call the local construction effort. So digging a little more in depth on each of those factors for the foundation formula, this factor reflects the LEA's current state share of the foundation program divided by the total foundation program for the LEA under Section 5201 of the education article. This is information that is calculated by MSDE, which we receive from them for use in the state cost share formula. The guaranteed tax-based program, this factor provides additional state education aid to counties having less than 80% of the statewide average wealth per pupil and provide local education funding above the minimum local share required by the foundation program. The IAC's formula includes the amount of state aid provided to the LEA by the program, again, divided by the foundation program of the LEA. The free and reduced price meal factor reflects an add-on for 20% of the amount by which the LEA's free and reduced price meals percentage exceeds the statewide free and reduced price meal percentage in the prior school year. The Tier 1 county factors, Tier 1 counties, also known as One Maryland counties, are defined in the economic development article as counties including Baltimore City, which during the most recent 24-month period have had either an average unemployment rate that exceeds 150% of the state average unemployment rate by either 150% or at least 2 percentage points, or have had a median household income that is equal to or less than 75% of the state median household income. For purposes of the IAC's formula, LEAs are eligible for a 5% increase to their state cost share for meeting either of these thresholds, or a 10% increase if they meet both. Finally, the enrollment growth factor is the difference between the percentage growth in an LEA's full-time equivalent enrollment from the 6th prior year to the prior year, and the percentage growth in the statewide full-time equivalent enrollment for that same time period. Finally, the local capital effort factor is defined under the state cost share formula as 10 times the amount by which the county and local boards total school debt at the end of the second prior fiscal year plus the total school construction expenditures from its operating budget from the fourth to the second prior fiscal year, which exceeds 1% of the county's wealth for the prior year. Finally, just real quick, wanted to take a minute to review some of the recently approved project-based add-ons to the state cost share that Alex referenced in his introduction. These were authorized under 2022 House Bill 1290, and while not specifically a part of the formula itself, do provide additional funding at the project level, which in many cases can offset the decrease an LEA may experience in its overall state cost share. Those include 10 percentage points if the proposed school construction project is at a school with a concentration of poverty level of 80% or greater, 5 percentage points if the proposed project is at a school with a concentration of poverty level between 55% and 80%, 5 percentage points if the proposed project is at a school rated good or superior on the most recent maintenance effective assessment, or that received an adequate rating for which the school's systems have an expected useful lifespan of at least 120%, and 5 percentage points if the proposed school construction project is a net zero energy school. While that is certainly a lot of technical information, I would reiterate Alex's comment previously that staff are working to compile the necessary data to inform and support a reevaluation and modernization of the formula over the next 2 years. So with that review, would be glad to respond to any specific questions members may have regarding this information before moving into the specific motion.
Questions? Alex, do you want to say anything more about this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I completed all my comments.
Secretary Chaudhry.
A quick question. One of the motions or second motion is going to be to have the proposed COMAR revisions published in the Maryland Register. I was just curious, are we going to also publish it on the website as well for public comment, for review? I always say that because not a lot of people actually look at the Maryland Register on a regular basis.
Yes, Secretary Chaudhry, as soon as that gets published in the Maryland Register, we take an excerpt from what is in the Maryland Register, post it to our website. We also send out a Gov delivery to anyone that's signed up for our email service to let them know that that's available and open for public comment.
Great, thank you.
Secretary Flora.
Yes. First of all, I want to applaud whoever's working on the spreadsheet because it's got to be a monster of a one to try to put all these formulas together. And thank you for breaking down, someone new to this, breaking down all of this. And so I think my comment is more related to really what was stated in terms of the future, in terms, because there are aspects of this formula that I do wonder about. And so will we receive a summary of any of the public comments? And then how will sorry, it's not specific to this vote, but how will the process unfold for re-examining the current full formula?
So thank you for that question, Secretary Flora. We have not laid out the exact process steps yet, but what we intend to do is essentially conduct data collection over the next few months to ensure that we have information on all of the relevant factors, both the existing factors in the current formula and any other factors that we think ought to be considered. I'll just mention one example. MSDE and the state in general have been moving towards a concentration of poverty measure for blueprint and other funding considerations for education. Right, that is has been viewed to be a more accurate and relevant measure than free and reduced meals had been. So that's obviously one factor that we will want to look at modernizing, perhaps replacing with a concentration of poverty related, that sort of thing. So, but we want to get more detail from all the relevant agencies and pull those together for consideration. So that we expect to take some time. And then we also intend to do an engagement process with the LEAs and other stakeholder groups to consider the different issues and data available before coming to any sort of draft, replacement measures that you would consider. So I expect this will take, the full 2 years before the next cycle, so that we can do this right, really get all relevant information and input. And so we'll be providing you with a lot more information over the coming months about that.
Great. Well, I applaud that effort that's going to be happening to update the formula, and happy to support whatever you all need as you move into that, both through our local regional planning offices and sort of just some of the on the ground connections we have in the local areas also in terms of that whole effort. But
thank you.
Yeah, this is a very complex and very important, clearly, and thank you for also offering to walk me through this when I reached out to you about needing to drop out of this meeting. But with that, I just thank everyone that's been working on this. I know it's complicated, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to read the motion.
Yes. So the motion is to adopt the fiscal year 2025 and fiscal year 2026 state cost share percentages as presented, calculated based upon the formula in COMAR section 14390205, and to approve amendments to COMAR 14390205 as presented in this item, and to authorize staff to make additional technical edits as necessary. The proposed COMAR revisions will be published in the Maryland Register and will be open for public comment for a period of at least 30 days before returning to the IAC for final approval.
Thank you. Someone like to make this motion, please?
So moved.
Ms. Everhart,
Paula.
second by Mr. Gibbons. Any more discussion? I want to thank Alex and Tom and the staff for all the work and outreach they did with members answering questions. Good job. All in favor, say aye. Raise your hand. Any opposed? Thank you. Good job. Excuse me. Item 6, adoption of the 2025 Capital Improvement Program instructions. Arabia?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Each year, generally in July, IAC staff publish the instructions for the upcoming public school construction capital improvement program in preparation for the submission of local education agencies funding applications in October. In support of this effort, the commission is being asked to adopt the FY 2025 CIP instructions, which begins on page 197. The instructions are intended to provide clarity and expand on school construction related subject matters that are of interest to the general public, local entities, and state officials. The recommended changes for fiscal year 2025 range from project descriptions, classification updates, amendment of language to substantiate the level of design progress needed for funding requests to be considered eligible for first-time funding, and also to provide updated contact information for special services that are eligible for funding through the IAC, such as career and technical education and special education. In terms of legislative updates, a major inclusion in this year's instructions are directions so that LEAs, local education agencies, are in compliance with the Safe Walk to Schools Act of 2022, which can be found on page 206 of your agenda. Beginning in fiscal year 2025, LEAs will be required to submit a pedestrian safety plan for projects that increase the capacity of a school by more than 100 students. The development of the plan will need to be completed in collaboration with the school system's local education agency responsible for transportation, related activities, and the State Highway Administration. The development and submission of a safety plan is required for a school boundary area where transportation is not provided for by the county. The plan must outline existing and potential safe routes for students to bike and walk to school. School zones on both state and county roads will need to be evaluated to determine whether road expansion should be considered, and also requires that existing infrastructure and sidewalks along existing and potential routes that will be used by students are analyzed to determine whether an increased capacity is necessary and can be accommodated to ensure pedestrian safety. The IAC role is limited to the collection of the plan and confirmation that the plans are in compliance with regulations. The forms that generally or normally accompany the instructions are currently under review for potential changes. The expectation is that all updated forms will be available and accessible to the local education agencies by early to mid-August. The motion is to adopt the FY 2025 Public School Construction Capital Improvement Program instructions as presented. I can now stand for questions.
Someone like to make a motion to that effect? Ms. Eberhardt, second by Mr. Gibbons. Discussion. Any questions for Arabia about the new instructions? Okay. All in favor, say aye, raise your hands. All opposed? Okay.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you, Arabia. Items 7 and 8 are issues that Secretary Flora was concerned about, so we split the motions up. Number 7, maximum state allocation and Built to Learn program funding increases, Montgomery County Public Schools, Neillsville Middle School. Melissa? Hi.
Hi. Good morning, Commission. As had been mentioned, these items were both on the previous agenda and they were included as one item, and we've split them up and provided additional details to explain the specific circumstances that led to both of these requests. So it's 2 requests from Montgomery County for increase in funding for projects that were previously approved through Build to Learn Act funding. So the first one is Neillsville Middle School. The initial request for Neillsville Middle School was limited to 50% of their original project budget, and that was below their maximum state allocation. When they bid the project, the cost of the project increased, which is typical for where the economics were going at that time. And because of that cost increase, they came back for a request to increase their BTL allocation by $5,210,000. That maximizes their state allocation of $32,572,000. The motion is to increase the maximum state allocation and Build to Learn Act program funding for the Montgomery County Public Schools Neilsville Middle School Replacement Project by $5,210,000 from $27,362,000 for a total revised allocation of $32,572,000.
Someone like to make that motion, please? Ms. Everhart? Second by Mr. Derenberg. Any questions, Madam Secretary? Do you have any questions about this one? Was the other one you were more concerned about?
Yeah, no, I think the only question, but it's not going to hold it up, is what is our new percentage? So we were at 50% and they're still within their percentage. I'm just trying to run the math here.
Yeah. It's still 50% of their maximum state allocation. So
Okay.
50% of their maximum budget.
Okay,
Their
thank
project does cost more than the state determination, but they're locally funded.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All in favor of the motion, say aye or raise your hands. Any opposed? Thank you. Item number 8, maximum state allocation and Built to Learn program funding increases, Montgomery County Public Schools, Woodward High School. Melissa?
Okay, this case is slightly different. The phase 1 portion of the Woodward High School project included 334,602 gross square feet. That project is currently under construction on the site that was previously occupied by Tilden Middle School. The schedule for this project was phased in order to provide holding space for the Northwood High School students, while Northwood High School was undergoing a comprehensive renovation. So the long range planning for Woodward High School included a regional fine arts magnet program, and the program associated with that was not yet finalized in order for the state to set a maximum state allocation. But in long range planning to account for the Woodward High School students, Montgomery County needed this phase 1 project to go forward to provide those seats. So in order to support the complex planning for this project, the IAC determined an early allocation of $28,970,000 for the project and approved that through Build to Learn Act funding. At this time, phase 1 is under construction. The educational specifications have been submitted and reviewed. The SD has been submitted and reviewed, and they're proceeding through the design of phase 2. That includes the program for the magnet program, the fine arts magnet, so that we can now set a maximum state allocation for the project, which is set at $78,597,000. So Montgomery County is requesting an additional $49,690,000 to bring their total allocation to that maximum state allocation and utilize all available state funding for the project. So I will read the motion and then stand for questions.
Okay.
To set the maximum state allocation for MCPS Woodward High School replacement project at $78,597,000 and increase the BTL program funding by $49,690,000 from $28,907,000 for a revised total allocation of $78,597,000. Any questions?
Someone like to make that motion, please? For purposes of discussion.
So moved.
Mr. Gibbons, second by Ms. Eberhardt. Questions? So this was a phase 2, all planned all along.
Right.
This additional 49 million. Okay. Any further questions of Melissa? Secretary Flora?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for breaking this out. I really appreciate it. It's much clearer now. I'm in favor, but I think for future reference, because this is a phased, it would be helpful in the motion to reference that for, so that the increased is for what I'm understanding is the phase 2, or the fact that the original was a preliminary. It just for precedent setting, it just might be helpful in the motion for future reference, just to make that clear that we weren't all of a sudden
Yeah.
Incorporating that size scale of a project increase. But I've already delayed things enough, so I can move on at this point. Thank you.
Well, why don't we just add those words, Alex, about this was phase 2. I don't think that changes the fundamental meaning of anything, substance of anything.
That's fine. Let's make that motion then as amended.
Yeah. On the motion as amended to include the fact that it was phase 2, all in favor say aye or raise your hands.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Item 9, FY 2024 School Safety Grant Program, Arabia.
Yes, good morning again. In fiscal year 2022, the Maryland Center for School Safety was directed by the legislator to administer the funding allocations for the School Safety Grant Program in collaboration with the IAC. In fiscal year 2023, the School Safety Grant Program was reverted back to the IAC. The goals of the School Safety Grant Program align with the mission of both the IAC and the Maryland Center for School Safety, which have forged a strong partnership between both state agencies, with the main purpose or mission being to provide safe learning environments through school construction-related activities. The success of this program is due to the foresight of the IAC to delegate authority to the Maryland Center for School Safety to grant extensions and solicit requests in collaboration with the IAC's technical experts to evaluate and determine project eligibility. Both agencies are in agreement that it is important to maintain continuity of the grant administration process and in the best interest of the local school districts and the Maryland School for the Blind. Staff are recommending that the Center for School Safety continue to facilitate the processing of applications and funding allocations. To implement this year's school safety grant application notice of funding availability guidance document, and to authorize the chair of the commission to execute the memorandum of understanding, which begins on page 234, staff are also seeking your approval. The draft MOU outlines the roles and responsibilities of the IAC and the Maryland Center for School Safety. The tentative schedule, as outlined in the guidance document, is to begin accepting school grant applications on August the 1st, distribute project approval or denial letters within 30 days after receipt of a complete application, and to provide grant assurance notices within 30 days after the distribution of the award approval letter. In fiscal year 2023, a range of projects have been approved through the program, from improved communication systems, access control systems, camera surveillance systems, door improvements, and other interior building modifications, with a total allocation of $9.9 million. Joining me today is Gifty Kwashi, Fiscal Grants Program Manager for the Maryland Center for School Safety. Gifty is available to respond to questions regarding the center's success with administering the School Safety Grant Program on behalf of the IAC, as well as to exhibit support for the approval of the Notice of Funding Availability. The recommended funding allocation shown on pages 220 and 232, and the list of eligible project categories on page 238. I can read the motion. The motion is to delegate to the Maryland Center for School Safety, in consultation with the IAC staff, for the purpose of determining project eligibility, authority to administer the FY 2024 School Safety Grant Program and grant extension request for FY 2024 School Safety Grant Program projects, and to approve the School Safety Grant Program Notice of Funding Availability pending non-substantive edits by the Maryland Center for School Safety and IAC staff. Also, to direct the Maryland Center for School Safety to solicit school safety grant projects from LEAs in the Maryland Center for the Blind with a maximum total FY 2024 allocation of $10 million and available prior year funding. To allocate funding as presented in this item to each LEA based on a combination of their proportion of the total 2022 enrollment and their proportion of the total facility square footage, with every LEA receiving a minimum allocation of $200,000. And finally, to authorize the chair to execute the memorandum of understanding between the IAC and the Maryland Center for School Safety pending non-substantive edits by the Maryland Center for School Safety and the IAC staff. Gifty and I can now stand for questions.
Thank you, Arabia. Thank you
You're
for being
welcome.
here, Gifty. Would someone like to make this motion for purposes of discussion? Mr. Gibbons, second by Ms. Everhart. Questions about this program? Anything? Okay, all in favor say aye or raise your hands.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Gifty, for being here to be available. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Arabia. Okay, item 10, FY 2024 Healthy School Facility Fund recommendations. Arabia?
Yes, since the implementation of the Healthy Schools Facility Fund program in fiscal year 2020, the IAC has approved 276 projects totaling over $215 million. For this meeting, the commission is being asked to approve 24 projects through the fiscal year 2024 Healthy Schools Facility Fund program for Baltimore City, totaling $44.9 million. And also 35 projects totaling $45 million to address environmental health risks in other areas of the state, and $2 million in reserve funds. The recommendation for funding is for projects that were determined to be an immediate risk to the health of the students and other occupants of the building, roof projects, HVAC-related projects, and window and door projects. Due to limited state funding and the increase in the state cost share for eligible projects that qualify for the concentration of poverty and maintenance add-ons, 26 projects are not being recommended for funding. As a matter of note, Baltimore City is not seeking construction funding, but rather design funding for the Abbotston Elementary School roof project. This was done to ensure that the project is not partially funded. The remaining unallocated funding for the city, for Baltimore City, will be available for distribution to a future project. Jean Shanholtz, the IAC's lead capital project manager, is available to respond to inquiries as it relates to the methodology used to determine the projects that are being recommended for approval. I can read the motion, which is to approve fiscal year 2024 Healthy School Facility Fund project allocations totaling $89.9 million, including $44.9 million for Baltimore City and $45 million and $2 million from the reserve funds for jurisdictions other than Baltimore City. Jean and I are available and can stand for questions.
Do I hear a motion to that effect for discussion purposes? Secretary Chaudhry and second by Mr. Gibbons. Questions? This is a $90 million program, correct? Total?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Jean, thanks for being here. Any other issues?
Welcome.
All in favor, say aye or raise your hands.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, completes our agenda. I don't know if Cassandra or Alex would like to make a brief comment on how our new space is coming along before we leave today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we have proceeded to construction of the tenant fit out process, and that is looks like it should proceed on schedule so that we can move in as expected at the beginning of September in the new space. Much appreciated. We thank DGS staff for their thorough support all along through this process. It's much appreciated. And that's all I have on that, Mr. Chair.
Any other issues anyone wants to bring up? It's good to see you all today. You hear a motion that we adjourn.
So moved.
Second by Ms. Eberhardt. All in favor, say aye. See you
Aye.
next month. Take care.
Thank you.